Welcome to the Essence of Liberty podcast. This is the horsemanship podcast where we discuss all things liberty to help you understand, connect, communicate, and play with your horse in a gentle, subtle, and force-free way. We'll get a bit nerdy about equine psychology and learning theory to understand the science behind it all. And we'll also dive into how to motivate your horse, ways to strengthen your relationship, solving those common problems, and how to use liberty as a way to build your horse up physically, mentally, and emotionally, all in half an hour or less. I'm Dr. Nadine Lindblom, former equine veterinarian, and I'd like to invite you to join me on this journey as a student of the horse. Hello, and welcome back to another episode. In this episode, I want to talk about this concept of it all being about the food. I hear a lot with people that are kind of hesitant to begin with food rewards with their horse because they don't want it to be all about the food. And that is really fair enough because, of course, sometimes the food rewards can become quite overpowering, especially if your horse is very food motivated. They can become quite hyper-fixated on the food. And you may have had quite a strong relationship and your horse wanted to spend time with you and everything like that. But then you use food rewards and suddenly the horse just comes up to you in order to sniff your pockets and see if you have food. And then if you don't have food, they just walk off as if, like that you're good for nothing now because you don't have any food rewards on you. I want to talk a little bit about that and how we can think about that and how we can sort of make sure that it doesn't become all about the food. And the very first thing with it being all about the food is that if you make it all about the food, it will become all about the food. It's really, really important that when you start working with food rewards, and like for the entire time as you continue working with food rewards, that it's not always about the food, right? If you're always coming into the paddock with food rewards and every time you go to catch your horse, it's to bring him out to do food reward training, then you do run the risk of your horse starting to think that it's all about the food all the time that he sees you. He's going to start to create these associations that he sees you and he goes, okay, now it's time for food. And I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. It's better for him to look at you and associate you with food rather than to associate you with fear or pain or anything like that. But of course, it feels a little bit superficial, a little bit transactional in order to have that kind of relationship with our horse. What I really encourage you to do when you start using food rewards, or if you're using food rewards right now with your horse, is to really emphasize time where food rewards are not involved. Go out into the pasture with your horse and just spend time with them without any. You can bring a carrot or something if you want in order to, like, if you want to give your horse a food reward or just a little treat when you go and greet them in the paddock. But I do encourage you to just be there and spend time with them, scratch on them, hang out, maybe meditate in the paddock as well, without those food rewards being involved at all. The problem comes up when every time you go into the paddock, you're bringing food rewards with you and you have this intention of doing something with the food rewards. And sometimes we almost feel obliged after a while to bring food rewards because we don't want our horses to be disappointed if we show up without bringing food rewards. But what I really encourage you to do is make it normal to go into the paddock sometimes and spend time with your horse without any food rewards involved. Because if that becomes normal, that sometimes you go out and you're just hanging out and you're just spending time together and there's no food rewards involved, your horse will start to catch on to that. If you're at this point at the moment where your horse is always expecting food every time they see you, then it may take a little bit to make that a new normal. And your horse may undergo this little moment of frustration where he sees you don't have any food rewards and he goes, oh, and he walks away or something like that. But just stick with it, okay? Go out into the pasture, spend time, hang out. You may be mucking out. You may just stand there and start scratching on them and just enjoy the time together. Have this connection time because it's really important that you have connection time as well as training time. It doesn't always have to be training time. You need to have a bit of a balance of the two. And I find that that makes a really, really big difference in your relationship in general and also how your horse goes in training because you've actually spent this time connecting with them. They trust you more and you have a little bit more of a deeper connection with them that's not just about the food. Because if it does become all about the food, then what can happen is that your horse doesn't really feel a whole lot of security around you, perhaps. It's just kind of, you're just the provider of food. But if you do spend that extra time with them and connecting and just hanging out, then your horse will start to see you as a little bit more than that. That's the first thing. If you make it about the food, it will become all about the food. But if you actually take the time to spend time with them without food, then that will also become the new normal. And it is so, so important that you do that. The next thing with it being all about the food is that the higher the food reward value is, the more likely it is that it will become all about the food. If you have a very high, if you're always bringing carrots, if you're always bringing sweet feed or something like that as a food reward or as a treat for your horse, then your horse is going to get much more excited about the fact that you may have food rewards with you than he would if you generally just give them pretty boring stuff. I've talked about this in previous episodes, and I sound like a broken record talking about food reward value, but it really is incredibly important. You want the food rewards that you use to be something that your horse kind of wants rather than something that they desperately need. If you're always using food rewards that are kind of low value, then you do reduce the risk of it becoming all about the food and your horse becoming hyper-fixated on the food and seeing the food, only the food, and he doesn't even notice that you're there, right? Just using very low value food rewards is really important for this reason as well as the other reasons that I have discussed in previous episodes. The very last thing, you want to have the connection time versus training time. You want to have a low value food reward. And the third one is that you can have a start and an end signal to your sessions. If you don't have a clear start and end signal, then your horse is going to come up to you and start to think that you're training, especially if you do training in the paddock like I do. I love doing training in the paddock because that's where they feel really secure and safe, and they can generally really be in that optimal zone of learning a lot easier than taking them away from the herd and doing stuff somewhere else. But to have a start and end signal, it really starts to differentiate the training time to your hanging out time. Your start signal can generally be like, it can be a hand signal, it can be a word, sometimes just the environmental factors can play a role as well. Like I know that if I come up and I have my food reward bag on me, like my waist bag, then my horses know that it's pretty much training time. That's kind of like a start signal. If I take the bag off, that's like my end signal. And sometimes I show my empty palms as well. And I say, all done, as a sign that we have finished the session. And that way you can really start to differentiate this training time with time that you're just hanging out. Because when it comes to training time, for me, I find that it's pretty okay for the food to be a main focus because that is what I use as a main motivator. And with horses, they don't have the same type of intrinsic motivation as humans do. They do have intrinsic motivations like seeking and playing and care, like social connecting and everything like that. That can be a intrinsic motivator. But depending on what you're asking your horse to do in the sessions, like if you're asking them to do quite extreme things or challenging things that require a lot of effort, either mentally or physically, then you're probably going to have need to have something in it for them. And that will generally be the food reward. When it comes to the training, for me personally, I don't mind if the focus changes a little bit more towards the food than it does towards me. But then we can still have this connection time, and we can even take breaks in the training as well, and just like I can just stand there and scratch on them and they can lean in on it and just we can relax together and then start training again. But to be realistic, there needs to be something in it for your horse as well. And food rewards are a very, very good motivator, especially for this type of training. I would much rather my horses associate me with food reward training than for me to be applying something aversive towards them and they be associating me applying something bad or for them to have an uncomfortable experience. But those are my views on how to not make it all about the food. If you make it all about the food, it will probably become all about the food. Make sure that you have that connection time versus your training time, that you have low value food rewards, and that you have a start and an end signal to your training. And you will start to see a very big difference. If you feel at the moment like it's all about the food, if you start becoming consistent about these things, then you will see a little bit of a change in the time that you spend with your horse and the strengthening and deepening of your relationship together. But that's it from me for now. I hope you enjoyed it, and I am going to sign off, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.